Okay, I know, not technically a lift, but my Sahara is getting Rubicon takeoff suspension. This included everything I needed, even though I was only going to replace the springs and the shocks. Changing the shocks and springs on your Jeep is a really easy job. It just requires some basic tools and automotive knowledge, and of course, the ability to safely raise your Jeep to get it done. I'll have the part numbers in the description, as well as pictures of those numbers throughout the video, and especially at the end, I'll have them all together. You can look at the part numbers online to get an idea of what kind of lift you might be able to get out of this. It's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of an inch, which I found to be true in my case. When you're buying Rubicon takeoffs, make sure they're from a similar Jeep to what you have. I have a 4-door, so they came off a 4-door Rubicon. Mine has the tow package, so did the donor Jeep. The components of the Rubicon suspension are the same as the Sahara and Sport, with the exception of those shocks and springs. The person I bought these from threw in a brand new set of the Mopar lower control arms, which are slightly longer than stock. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to try those out or not. Maybe later. In order to replace the shocks and springs, you'll need to be able to raise your Jeep and lower the axle while supporting it with a floor jack. A couple other things that would be helpful would be disconnecting the brake line brackets so the brake lines hang freely and aren't under tension, and also the vent tubes on the differentials, because that's actually the place where I had the least amount of slack available. I'll show you how to do these in the steps as well. This will be a shortcut video on the install showing you the vital steps, not a real-time installation of everything. The end product is stiffer than the original suspension, which I really appreciate. It's more responsive, it's great on the road, it's better off-road. I think it's just better all the way around. If you have a Sport or a Sahara and want a little better suspension but don't want to dive into a lift and maybe actually get a little bit of height, this might be a good inexpensive way to get that done. Just make sure the shocks that you're getting are in good shape. The newer the better, and that the person that you're getting them from knows the specifics of the vehicle they came off of. Looking up the model numbers that is on the tags on the springs will tell you where they go on the Jeep, front or back, and the model number with the higher number in a given pair goes on the passenger side of the Jeep. The shocks are not right and left specific, only front and back. These components should give me somewhere in the neighborhood of an inch to an inch and a half in overall lift. With the Jeep in gear, parking brake engaged, and the front wheels chocked, you'll start by lifting up the rear differential. You'll remove the rear sway bar end links and unbolt the brake hanger bracket from the axle. The top bolt in the rear sway bar end link is the one that's in the way, not the bottom. So you could probably get away with just removing that top one. Here's the brake line hanger. Shock bolts are 18 millimeters. You can get to the top one by pulling back the fender liner, although be aware that you will break these trim Christmas trees in the process. There will be a link in the description where to get some more from Amazon. There's that top 18 millimeter bolt at the top of the shock. And with everything disconnected, you should be able to lower the axle. Of course, don't forget to disconnect that vent tube from the axle, which can get pretty tight when you droop the axle down. Remove the rear wheels and droop the axle so that the shocks are fully extended. Once the shocks are out of the way, the springs should come out. You may have to lower the axle a little bit more. Oh, you're going to need that cap. That is an indexed piece, the bump stop at the top there, that will need to go back in. Make sure you don't throw that away. Maybe clean it up. Make sure to index the little tab into the hole in the frame at the top and index the spring to it tightly. On the lower perch, it'll just sit on there. By yourself, holding that upper mount to the spring in place while you jack up the Jeep is tricky. The springs may need a little encouragement to go in. And same process on the other side. These shocks are about an inch longer when extended, but the real height comes from springs. You may need to raise or lower the axle in order to get the shock bolts in. Make sure that when you do raise and lower the axle that the springs are still seated properly and indexed. The upper shock bolts were torqued to 110 pounds, lowers to 100, brake line hangers to 16 pounds, sway bar links upper 90 pounds, lower 80 pounds. Of course, double check these. All right, well, that takes care of the back. Here's a little comparison with the unlifted front to the completed rear. You can see a little bit more headspace there between the tire and the fender well. So here's the before picture. And here's the after with the completed rear and the uncompleted front. A little bit too much rake. Moving on to the front, you'll need to address the sway bar end links. Just remove the bottom bolt on each side and push the sway bar down for access. Now's a good time to jack up the differential and remove the wheels. In the front, it's important to remove that breather tube from the back of the differential because it's really tight. Remove the bottom bolt of the end link and pivot it out of the way. So no need to remove that one or even loosen it. On both sides, you can remove the brake line hanger with a 15mm socket. And push the sway bar down and out of the way so the spring can be removed. And just like the back, remove the 18mm bolts for the shocks and pull back the liner to get to that top shock bolt. You may have to do a little adjusting with the axle to get the springs and the shocks to fit. Maybe a little encouragement with a little mallet might help. And just a quick look at the driver's side once it's put all back together. And don't forget to reattach that differential breather hose. Yep, that's it. The torque values I used in the front for the shocks, the upper bolts at 81 pounds, the lowers at 74. The sway bar end links, the uppers at 69, the lowers at 59. And the brake line hanger is at 8 pounds. Double check these. So, all told, I gained about 1 inch in the front and about 1.5 inches in the back. I like the overall look a lot better. I do not have highline fenders, and the 33-inch tires look fantastic with this extra clearance. After driving it on-road and off-road on some rocks, I'm very happy with the result, and I would do this again. For the money spent and the time invested, this is a no-brainer for me. Wish I would have done this a long time ago. So that takes care of this project. And here's a montage of the parts used, and I'll also have a list of part numbers in the description. Thanks for watching. Hope this inspired you to make some changes that might be beneficial as well. And if you have any tips, pointers, or observations, feel free to throw those in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.